You know those days when the paperwork just piles up?
Simple Practice is the EHR that makes it all easier. Scheduling, billing, treatment plans, even notes. No wonder over 225,000 practitioners trust it. Check them out at simplepractice.com.
You're listening to the Modern Therapist Survival Guide, where therapists live, breathe, and practice as human beings. To support you as a whole person and a therapist, here are your hosts, Curt and Katie Vernoy.
Welcome back, Modern Therapists. This is Modern Therapist Survival Guide. I'm Curt with Katie Vernoy, and this is the podcast for therapists about the things that go on in our practices, the things that help us to be able to show up in those practices. And this is that magical time of year where sessions maybe slow down. We might take some holiday. We might trade our weighted blankets for party clothes and our empathy fatigue for festive empathy fatigue. But really, what our working title for this episode is how to have a non-Instagram worthy vacation as a holiday sort of send off to the year here. And with the way that everything goes, society seemingly has mandated that we have new stressors, which is a pressure to show that we have fantastic downtime. And we're not just now expected to rest, but we need to show that we have the perfect rest. And we want to dispel some of the myths, give some of the permissions to actually have rest and not just performatively rest. And we're going to cut through the guilts and the shoulds and set some realistic holiday expectations for ourselves, that you don't need to read the entire works of Nietzsche before we get to the end of the holidays here. We can actually emerge out of this and maybe be at peace with ourselves so we can return back to work. So, Katie, on your holidays, what do you do to rest?
Oftentimes, I try to get out into nature if I can. Obviously, being in California, that's a little bit easier because if I'm in snow, it's not feet and feet of snow. It can be even just cold, rainy weather if the time allows for it. But I try to get away from what you were talking about, the reading all the works of Nietzsche. Not having a productive holiday, not having that be the goal, to get caught up on all the things. Obviously, if there are things that need to happen for the business, like financial or those types of things that need to happen before December 31st, I do take care of that. I try to do it before I sign off, but if I haven't, I give myself a break to not worry about it. But otherwise, I try to limit expectations as much as possible to only the things that are kind of the family responsibilities, the things that I want to do for celebratory purposes. Otherwise, I try to really just, this is going to sound like such a therapist-y thing to say, but otherwise I try to just feel into it and see what might be on the docket for the day. Getting some rest, trying to be active when I feel good in my body to feel active. I try to spend time with family, but not so much time with family that all the stuff comes up, all the family of origin and family dynamic stuff comes up and becomes too hard. I try to give myself space for grief for the people who are not able to be with us on the holidays, and be okay to cover myself for my therapy practice. So if I need to do all the stuff we talked about in that previous episode about when you're busy, and be able to get as much downtime as I can without trying to put too much pressure on it. So I try to do what we're talking about, but that's my, I think, honest answer about how I spend the time at the end of the year.
I think for me, I don't know if this is partially getting older, partially being busier, a combination of both, but it's something where I learned at a certain point in my life that when I'm coming back from vacations, I need to have a day back at home before going back to work. That it used to be that I could fly in on Sunday and go back to work on Monday. Now I'm very intentional about flying back in on Saturday and having Sunday to kind of reorient myself back into work mode. But as I get older and busier, I also realize that I need some of those days on the front end of my vacation too. That it's not just like it's not just a switch that turns on and I'm in vacation mode, but it feels as if I need a couple of days to unmask from work and being able to just kind of settle in. So I try to be really intentional about having lowered expectations for myself around what I'm supposed to accomplish on my days off, because this is really embracing that rest and reset is a process. It's not just something that is going to happen just because I don't have work scheduled. And breaking out of my routine really makes it to where I have to let some of that mental energy catch up and to be able to let go of all of the things on my list that I didn't get done before I closed up for the end of the year. You're mentioning getting financials and stuff done. The winter holidays at the end of December, sure, those things are going to get done, but having social media stuff ready for when I come back in January, that, all right, it's not the end of the world, that if that is things that I have to get back to when I come back in January, giving myself the permission to let go.
I think I start letting go of that stuff probably the beginning of December, where I then continue to refine my to-do list to only the things I absolutely have to do before the end of the year. And I make sure that I get through those things that I absolutely have to. But sometimes my definition of what I absolutely have to get through changes as the month continues. So I think that's a part of my process too, is letting go of what hasn't happened and really trying to turn off. One of the things you said before we hit record really resonated for me, and I want to make sure that we spend enough time on it, which is not feeling guilty about only being partially off and not fully off the grid, and then also going beyond avoiding work to actively resting. And so I guess those are two different points. I want to make sure we hit both of them. But I think it is easier for me to feel okay with only being partially off during the holidays, because I know that most people at the end of the year are covering their own practices. And I can't be off grid. I need to at least have some availability to clients, like we talked about in the crisis response one. And there's no pressure to get stuff done on any particular timeline, so it doesn't feel onerous to be able to do it. But there are points at which I feel bad that I'm not 100% off grid, because it feels like that is the pinnacle of achievement on downtime.
Let's just be realistic and say that's okay. It's okay that some of us are going to check some work emails, do a little bit of light admin. This might be what our transition process is. Our unmasking from work mode into vacation mode might actually entail doing a little bit of work. And I think consistent with what I was just talking about, as far as it's a process, not a switch, that
Yes.
you can do a little bit of work. Some of us feel comforted by having a little bit of work and productivity. Some of us might even need it as an excuse to get away from family for 15 minutes. You do you, and do it with intention, but some of us aren't going to be able to completely just shut everything down. And having some of the space, the overall goal is do less work, be rested. But if you have to do some work, that's fine. And if it creates more stress for you trying to do this perfectly and in a way that you can say, I have the most, wonderful holiday because I just turned all work away. This is what this episode's about. This is the don't do it for the gram episode. This is do it just kind of well enough. Because the other point that you're bringing up here is there's a major difference between active rest and avoidance of work. Now, in a previous lifetime, I was a marathon runner, I was a marathon coach, and one of the really important things in training your body and your mind for running that kind of a distance is the importance of rest. And even within that part of my life, there was a big distinction between active rest and just complete, just not doing stuff, passive rest sorts of things. Passive rest would be, okay, it's time to kick up my feet and watch Netflix. Active rest for marathon runners is stretching. It's doing light cross training to be able to avoid injuries. It's things to actively do to help replenish yourself, not just avoid the training. And I hold the same principles for how we should have our downtime is you can avoid work and stress yourself out, or you can do things that help you to be able to tend to yourself in a way that still can kind of regenerate some energy and feel restful for yourself.
Simple Practice's new AI-powered note taker records my sessions and then turns them into structured progress notes in just minutes, which means I can wrap up my day without spending my evening writing notes.
And for a limited time, Simple Practice is giving you a 45-day free trial of Note Taker. That's an extra 15 days when you sign up before January 16th, 2026. Get your hours back with AI-powered progress notes that generate key session takeaways just minutes after your session ends. Note Taker helps you remain HIPAA compliant, safely generate notes without compromising on HIPAA compliance or data security. Keep quality notes without typing, record your post-session reflections and turn them into structured progress notes. Stay prepared for every session. Quickly review key points before appointments, making it easy to pick up where you left off. And level up your documentation and reclaim your time with AI-powered Note Taker. Plus, get a 45-day free trial when you sign up by January 16th.
Everything I need is in one place, and it just works. No wonder more than 225,000 practitioners trust Simple Practice as their preferred EHR. You can see why at simplepractice.com. For me, what that looks like is when I'm not thoughtful or I don't have anything planned and I don't have the energy to try to shift into more of an active rest mode, sometimes it feels like I'm just waiting. I'm scrolling through my phone or I'm watching something and it isn't really serving any purpose for me. There are times when I need that type of rest where it's mindless, it's whatever it is, right? I do know that. But when it gets to be too much, it doesn't necessarily stress me out and I'm okay with being bored. It just doesn't feel restorative. It doesn't feel like there's anything happening, and time just passes without really, I think, any functionally positive stuff. Will I remove that from my schedule completely? Probably not. But the types of times when downtime has been especially good for me is finding those things that help me rest in a way that I think is what I need. So I talked about getting outside. I think part of it's getting outside. Part of it's also potentially being able to move my body, which with a very sedentary job, it just feels like a breath of fresh air for my body. I think being able to read books that inspire me or help me to, I guess, vacate, fun books. And I think it's doing things that address some of those depletions. Is that even a word? The areas in which I'm depleted so that I'm able to feel more rested fully. But I worry that even in saying that, it feels like, well, then you should make sure that you've read this book, this kind of book, and you have to have this many hikes and, whatever it is. I don't think that it should have some sort of a recipe or a required level of productivity. But I think in choosing my activities, there are definitely days that I can find myself doing more of the things that feel nourishing to me, to my body, to my mental health. And there are definitely days when I'm a bump on a log and about midday, I start feeling angsty and not very good. And I can continue on and basically feel like I'm in a waiting room or on a plane, just doing whatever I can to pass time. And that doesn't feel good.
I'm thinking about some of the vacations that I've taken in the past, and including my most recent one, where sometimes I'll have a week off and we'll get out of town for a little bit. And the goal is we're going to go there and we're going to do nothing. And we'll kind of have the first couple of days where we sleep in and we read and we watch TV and we play board games and we don't have to get anything done.
Sure.
And I know for me that it's about the point on whatever getaway or something like this where it's okay, now I'm feeling like I need to go and do something. And maybe it's before that angsty point that you're describing that is, oh, now I'm moving from just catching up and getting some restorative energy into now I'm actively wanting to go for the hike, get out, go explore. That it's not something that is assigned to do. It's not a checklist to get done right away, but it's listening and attuning to my own energy as far as, okay, this is how I'm feeding my energy now. It's not necessarily just booking a week where I'm going to shut the curtains and tune out the rest of the world, but it's being able to give myself the permission to be able to adapt and change and do something to be able to find all of the ways to restore myself, not just locking in and becoming just as rigid during my downtime as it is when I have my work schedule.
It seems like we're both talking about maybe not Instagram worthy, but pretty darn good vacations where we're giving ourselves permission to work a little bit, to relax a little bit, to do fun things, to not be productive, and not hold ourselves to what actually is Instagram worthy, but actually doing the things that help us feel good. What I worry about are the folks on the other extreme who are very anxious or overcommitted or unable to really enjoy time off. And I think there's a few different reasons why people might have that as well. Whether it's financial, there's a lot more expenses oftentimes at the end of the year, as well as lower income coming in for folks in private practice. There are things that are potentially hanging that we have trouble letting go of. So there's not necessarily, hey, I'm totally off grid, but I'm not off grid at all. And I'm checking my email every time I open my phone, even though I've got my out of office on or whatever it is. It's, the folks who are buckling in. And if you're working, we're not necessarily talking about that, but the people who are buckling in saying, this is our Super Bowl and therapists are ready to go and those types of things. And potentially scheduling additional sessions or doing things that are hopefully clinically required and aligned, but maybe due to some of these worries about finances or difficulty not working. And so I wanted to spend maybe a minute or two on this as well, because there are times when my not Instagram worthy holiday is because I can't stop checking my email. And this was especially bad for me in the years that we had a conference, because it would be something where people were making budgetary decisions and they wouldn't get back to me. And it's, there's all the jokes that are like, we're at that circle back next year time. But there were still folks who would continue to work, and I would get emails between Christmas and New Year's, for example, on my schedule that would be, can we talk about sponsorship or whatever it is, right? So there are folks who also have a really hard time unplugging and actually don't expect themselves to be off the grid and have an amazing restful vacation. And so what advice do you have for folks who are having trouble unplugging even at all?
Stop it.
Yeah, that's an easy one. Just stop it. Stop it.
I think it really comes down to being able to try to attune to yourself and look at your why. Why are you going through this? Because I know for me, especially towards the end of the year, through the New Year's holidays, for some reason, school districts around me take 3 weeks off every year at this time. So a lot of my clients are out of town. I've got my own kids at home for several weeks. And what starts to creep into my mind is, oh no, what if the clients never come back? I'm not working as much as I used to. And it becomes kind of a money scarcity kind of mindset that ends up happening that is being able to, that is something that can end up driving a lot of this kind of emphasis for me. And if I actually stop and look at this is my motivation for doing these things, I'm better able to attend to what's actually causing these feelings to address the behaviors rather than just busying myself and kind of rearranging chairs on the Titanic. This is where if other motivations are coming up, I'm busy because I'm trying to avoid family, or I'm busy because I'm doing whatever your reasons are, address it at the core of the problem. So that way you can actually stop it versus just being busy for the sake of being busy.
I want to also highlight the anxiety piece of that because I think if we can use our coping skills to recognize that the consistent checking or the different things that you're scheduling are coming from a place of anxiety, we can try to address those things as well, both coping in the moment, but also planning ahead. And this is where I think we have an episode on Can Therapists Ever Take a Vacation? So I'll link to that in the show notes over at mtsgpodcast.com. But there's this element of making sure that you've accounted for this time off, and so that not making money isn't actually hurting your bottom line, that you're able to counter those intrusive thoughts with cold hard numbers that, hey, I met my numbers for this year, and next year I've already set it up so that I know that I'm going to continue to have targets that make sense while having this time off. I think the other thing is being able to put systems in place to minimize the desire, the capacity to be able to check things. There's a lot of apps on our phones so that we can, I mean, you could even take the email off your phone if you really want to, but that doesn't allow you to do that quick check-in to make sure everything's okay and, calm yourself down and move back into your vacation. But you can limit the time in different apps. You can put your apps on a different screen so it's not in the same place. So it's not this kind of habit that you've built up. I think there's making sure that for yourself, if you are in private practice and you've created the dynamic, that you don't have expectations that there's going to be communication during the holidays. If you're in a agency company that does have that expectation that people work when they're off, determine how you set the boundaries about that for yourself so that you are only on when you're supposed to be on, that there's not that mental load that you're carrying the whole time. It's more challenging if you're not your own boss or not able to have some sort of impact on it. But I think there's this element of being able to set systems in place to offset that anxiety, offset that urgency that can come up during any time that you're off work. And of course, if you can't stop thinking about work, if it's too overwhelming, maybe you should talk to somebody and be able to process that.
We're both really talking about dealing with your own internal critic of productivity. And
Sure.
especially if that's where you're operating for 50 weeks out of the year, this is what this time is for, is to be able to bounce back and have that productivity. I tell a lot of my clients about the Zen saying that you should practice mindfulness for 10 minutes every day, unless you're too busy. And then you should practice for an hour. And it really does speak to the needs to attend to what that internal critic is really driving and why it's really there and being able to deal with it. And if this is one of the things to add to your to-do list when you get back from vacation is to seek out therapy or consultation, then go ahead and do that. I think that, there's only so many ways that we can say, yeah, take naps, wear comfy clothes, do, things that are fulfilling. But this is also really kind of we can't be on for our clients all year long and not ever attend to ourselves. And I've heard some various discussions. I think I saw a post on Reddit here somewhat recently that, is actually going into the field of working in mental health, a form of self-harm. And this is something where we're really trying to emphasize that the rest is for you. It's not for your followers. It is for your clients in a certain way that you are taking care of yourself. But the being able to have non-goal oriented time is a mindset shift. And it's something that you turn it up and down like it's a a light on a dimmer switch as opposed to a light switch that's on and off. And ideally, if you listen to our systems of self-care episodes every so often, then you can build this into a more regular part of your month to month and week to week practice rather than it just being something that you expect to get all done in 2 weeks at the end of the year.
Before we wrap up, I just want to honor that this can be a very, very hard time for many
Yes.
folks. There's a lot of things that come up. I mentioned at the beginning of the episode grief or family of origin dynamics, or even just family dynamics that can come up. And it is so important as a human, but I think especially as a therapist, to be able to honor that this is going to be time when you may have to have extra self-care or extra compassion for yourself because of how challenging it is. And depending on what holidays you celebrate, part of the messaging around the holidays can be about it's the most wonderful time of the year. It's festive, it's wonderful, it's amazing. And so feeling misaligned with that or unaligned with that can feel really bad. And I know this is stuff that we've talked about with a lot of different folks in a lot of different episodes, especially around grief, but even around all the other pieces, where it is okay if you don't like this time of year and you're hunkering down and doing what you can to take care of yourself. It is okay if you love this time of year and you're overdoing and you know that you're going to have an emotional hangover and a physical hangover at the end of the season because you've done so much. So there's not one right way to do this is what I'm saying, but there is a lot of challenges that I think folks sweep under the rug because of how happy we're supposed to be, how connected we're supposed to be. And I want that to also be some of the expectations that we maybe drop or soften, because it's going to be a really, really hard time of year for a lot of people.
So stop trying to win the self-care Olympics, and or
but
at
do
least,
some self-care.
At least the performative self-care Olympics.
Yes, but still do some self-care, because it is an opportunity when caseloads are a little bit smaller, things are potentially slowing down.
And your worth as a therapist and as a human being is not measured by the quality of your holiday table or the number of likes that you get. This is really about being able to get rid of the guilt. If you are feeling the urge to post, tag us and hashtag it with low glamour holiday, and we will absolutely love and adore and embrace all of that if you're up for the challenge this holiday season.
And we may not respond to it immediately, let's be honest.
Exactly. So if your
sometime
holiday
mid-January, we will love that post.
Yes. If your holiday break is you wearing the same sweatpants for 72 hours or having a stack of way too much takeout, that's fine. Do it with, while you're not talking about clients. And congratulations. Hopefully that's actually genuine, authentic rest. So follow us on our social media. Go over to mtsgpodcast.com for our show notes. Continue on with this conversation in our Facebook group, the Modern Therapist Group. And until next time, I'm Curt Whithelm with Katie Vernoy.
If you're tired of juggling a dozen different tools, Simple Practice is your one-and-done EHR solution. Over 225,000 practitioners are already simplifying their workflow and saving hours daily. You could be too. Learn more at simplepractice.com.
Thank you for listening to the Modern Therapist Survival Guide. Learn more about who we are and what we do at mtsgpodcast.com. You can also join us on Facebook and Twitter. And please don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of our episodes.